Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia. You are listening to the 100x Entrepreneur podcast series, and today I am with Sandeep Aneja, founder and managing partner, Kaizen Private Equity. Welcome, Sandeep, to the podcast.
Thank you, Siddharth. Good to be here.
So, Sandeep, why don't you tell our listeners about your journey?
So, Siddharth, I think what's most relevant is that I came back to India after living in the US for many, many years. Came back in 2009 with the objective of continuing my investment work in India. And a few transitions had taken place in my life at that point. I was working as a venture capital in the tech space in the US, made some really exciting investments, did really well, and realized that I was ready to run my own firm. And what better place to do that than in India? What was happening in my life at that time was that I had become a father of three children by that time, and two of them were at that time living with me, and the other had already gone to college. The child, my first son, who was born in 2002, was diagnosed with some learning issues over the years. And we realized that we had to support him more actively. And that was one big reason for us to move back to India, because unlike the US, where each child is put into a cookie cutter and a predefined position, in India, each child who is unique may be considered a naughty or mischievous child for a while before they are put into a category of dyspraxia, dyslexia, Asperger, autism, etc. India is more forgiving, and that was critical for us because we quickly realized as a couple, as parents, that creating an environment which would protect the uh, motivation, protect the pride of a child was critical as we went through parenthood. So that was one of the biggest reasons we came back, and also realized that India education had not changed a lot, and we could potentially bring a lot of value to education. So my first instinct was to go out and buy a school for my son, to put him in that school and be the owner and the manager, so I could protect and take care of him as a parent would. Very different take than one would. So I was looking for a career transition as well at that time because of the issues we saw at home. And slowly I realized that we could make a bigger impact if we could do more in education than just build a school. So we essentially went out and I bid for schools, lost all the bids to other competitors because it was a very vibrant market, which was quite surprising to me. And ultimately made a team together, put a team together, which is a core part of Kaizen today. And we then decided that I would start a fund in investing, that's all I had done in my working life all my years, and in education, because that became my deep passion by that time. That's what drove me. So that's sort of the beginning of my second phase of life. First was to figure out what I wanted. Second is, now that I've figured out what I want, just to expand on that and make that the purpose for the rest of my years.
So, how did you started being an investor in US in the first place?
So I think I went to business school at Stanford. When I went there, I had only done consulting work before then. And consulting is very exciting, and it can be intellectually very promising, and it delivers a lot. You feel like you've accomplished a lot, but you don't feel like you've finished the accomplishment. So I decided during business school that I would not do consulting anymore. And being in Silicon Valley, what made most sense was to be in tech in some form. And I had no tech skills. So I could not be a developer or a product manager. I knew that very quickly. But I could be an investor. I could apply my analytical skills towards investing in tech. So I sort of found my way to investing and I worked second year of business school full time at a venture capital shop with the express purpose of transitioning into an investing role upon graduation. I didn't want to waste more time. So second year I worked full time, and that helped me get into investing.
So, what was your first firm and subsequent journey in US?
So essentially, this is post business school. Before business school, I had worked in consulting, so we'll let that go. In investing space, during business school, I worked at a shop called Wingspring. It was based in Palo Alto, right across from business school, and I would go there after work and spend my time from 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. all the way up to whatever, midnight, 1 a.m., just looking at deals. And that was very exciting because I could look at an incubator-like setup, which is what it was. It was not a pure VC shop. And we looked at few companies invested and backed 7 of them, and I was part of a few of them. And that whole incubator business model was flawed. Although we made some really good investments that did really well, but the cost structure of an incubator, including a 30,000 square foot facility and 4 partners, only $17 million under management, was not sustainable. So obviously we ceased to exist after 1 year. But of the 7 investments we made, I'd been involved in 3. I joined one of them as the number 2 to the CEO, doing everything he wanted because he was transitioning from Israel into US. And that company was action based. It sold process and product and meeting management software developed in Israel into US tech startups, but a totally different business model. The expectation was that we would sell each license at $250,000, but the market had changed. The post-dot-com bubble breaking nuclear winter was there, and we were now realizing that we had to make sales at $15,000 to $20,000 a license, 1/10 what we were expecting, even less. So that business model discovery took time. I was a critical part of that, and then I started carrying quota. I became a salesperson. So basically, we did what we could, and the company grew to a $4 million run rate in 2 years through this, which was pretty amazing. It got sold to another company in New York, and the same people who had been the owners, managers of Wingspring, referred me to another venture capital shop in San Francisco called Outlook Ventures, which was looking for a non-partner track associate position, and I joined that. This was a 3rd fund, and their claim to fame was that they, from their first fund, had invested a small amount of money in Yahoo, and that really helped them put together a consumer shop. But the times had changed, and Outlook had to reinvent itself from a consumer-focused venture capital entity to more enterprise software, because by 2002, which is when I joined Outlook Ventures, there was no consumer investments taking place because of what took place at that time with dot-com bursting. So we invested in enterprise software. I learned enterprise software as part of 8 investments at Outlook Ventures, probably the best ones. I found and led them, and during that process, I was there with them for 5 years and became partner out of a known partner track position, which was very exciting. And then it gave me the confidence that I could lead my own firm.
What's your purpose in life, Sandeep?
So at this point, I think I'm very driven by the fact that I'd like to bring quality education and quality services to the people at all economic strata, irrespective of where they are in life, through an investment process, through focus on the role of private sector in enabling some of those innovative solutions to come to life, such that we can improve the lives of the people throughout, by not just focusing on something so obvious as technology, but sectors to start with, such as education, then maybe expand that sector focus over time. At this time, all I can think of is, can we bring better, more measurable, more outcomes-driven education to the masses in India and the broader Asia region?
So what are the well-known names in which you have invested in education sector?
So far, we've invested in 13 companies in India. Some of the better-known companies are Founding Years, which is also known as KLAY, and that's in the business of providing high-quality daycare services to individuals, to families, and also to corporates which have working parents and often nuclear families, and they need quality, reliable services near site. And KLAY is the leader in that in the country. And this was a company that we invested in when there was only 1 center in Whitefield, and now it has 150 centers throughout the country, probably the best in the country in quality and what they hope to change. Very purposeful investment. Another one that's very exciting is Varthana, which we were not the first investors, but we came in as the first education investors. It used to be an NBFC before we came in that would lend to affordable private sector, school sector, but it transitioned itself and is doing a really good job into being a real good partner to those affordable private schools in their own transformation. And that transformation journey is assisted by the work that Kaizen has done, but Steve and his Rajesh, the 2 founders, have done an incredible job of founding and running a company which is transformative in its domain. So those 2 are very obvious winners and very good quality from our first portfolio. And then we've got a couple of other companies that have done really good work. I'll just name them. One is Insofe, International School of Engineering, that is based in Hyderabad and Bangalore, which is started by 2 PhDs from the US. One of them happens to be my school friend from grade 8, right? And he's come back from the US again to start Insofe, and they are probably the best private company in data science and affiliated training spaces in the world, not just in India. In India, they're number one by far in quality, and globally, they're ranked ahead of Columbia, ahead of Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, etc. And they're just a private company delivering such high quality programs. So we look after a product. And the last company I'd like to mention is Toppr, which again provides TOPPR, which provides tuition and test preparation services in various subjects to students in India today from the age of 12 to 18. And this is probably the best AI driven personalized learning product available in the market today. They've done a very good job in delivering a real strong personalized experience and providing doubt clearance and live sessions to students who want help in subjects which they don't get help in at school. And those are the four or five companies that we are very excited about.
So, when you invested in KLAY was just a one center company, as you told. What gave you the confidence to take that investment?
This again goes back to my personal journey, and this is a critical part of what we experienced as a couple in the US. My wife used to work at Oracle in Redwood Shores, and I used to work in San Francisco at Outlook Ventures, and our son was born. And she didn't want to give up work. That was critical to her. And we didn't find good, adequate quality daycare near home. But Oracle had a provider called CCLC, because of which she could go back to work. And she would drive our elder boy to work, drop him off at CCLC, get her work done, and drive him back home. And that was very comforting because she felt like she could take care of him and be with him when he needed help. And that's really important to a mom, especially early years. So we saw that as an obvious business model. India has the same characteristics. A lot of the people who work at Redwood Shores Oracle are of Indian origin, and they often transit between India and abroad, and that story is replicated across many corporates. So the market seemed to make sense from a first sense level as opposed to total deep, market research level. So when we met Priya earlier days and she was running one center, this became a critical part of our discussion. And we saw this as a strong vehicle for growth and differentiated vehicle for growth. And there was nobody else providing good service. So I could see the same quality at KLAY's first center, and I could see the same opportunity being replicated in India that we saw with Oracle and CCLC in Redwood Shores. So we backed that. That was the underlying thesis, and feeling that this would grow into something amazing.
So, what have been the markets in the last 5 years in education? You have been focused, and what have been your wins based on the market thesis that you had?
Yeah, I think there are three areas which have been really exciting to us. One is the childcare space. Obviously, KLAY is a big winner there. Second is the entire employability space. That has been a tough nut to crack because employability is not a pain that is felt by the person who needs to feel the pain. That is the employment seeker. Employability is the pain that is felt really by the employer. And therefore, the willingness to pay on part of the job seeker is limited because the job seeker is of the opinion that they've got a degree or a diploma and that's good enough. And often that is not good enough. So the realization of the lack of skill occurs after the job has been acquired. And at that point, it becomes the problem of the corporate, the employer, to train the person, to skill the person. So there is no obvious market there. It's often subsumed in the corporate. That's the market which has real value to create. Then there's the other segment within that, which is the blue collar segment, and that clearly is got bigger issues because of lack of standards among employers, willingness to hire for less cost as opposed to high skill, and there is no follow-up. Unlike Germany and Australia, where employers need to follow a strict set of standards before they hire anybody, including blue collar. In India, in particular, it is a rush to whoever you can hire fast, cheap for that day and get things done. And therefore, it's very hard to enforce standards. Therefore, it's very hard to enforce teaching and learning standards. So it's a tough market, although some companies are cracking it now. It's becoming a viable opportunity now. But in the premium professional skills space, we finally found a couple of companies that we're invested in, including Insofe, which are going to do really well because those are jobs that require fast-changing skills, rapidly acquired skills such as IT, and there we can make a quick move and show that the skills we deliver have a real impact. So therefore, it seems to work right now. That can be applied in other domains like healthcare and finance, and a couple of other companies like EduPristine are working on those as well. The third area is the confluence of education and finance. We like that a lot because we think that riding on the back of finance, we can bring good quality education and yet make a good amount of money behind that. But first, deliver good quality education, because a lot of the schools are today targeting private schools, delivering average education, retaining teachers, doing the best they can, fighting daily battles on the ground with everything that it takes to run a school. They're not really focused on quality every day. To make them focus on quality, it is a simple conversation, but there's a motivation attached to it, which is, if you do this quality focused work, which is to train your teachers, focus on health and safety of children, retention of teachers, incentivization, focus on curriculum and innovation, use of technology appropriately, and provide a healthy, safe, secure environment overall for learners and a happy environment, then education will grow on its own. You've got to get the inputs right. But to motivate them to get the inputs right, we need a vehicle such as finance, which is, if you do this, then you get a lower interest rate, or you get access to further capital, or your results will be better. Next time you borrow, it will be cheaper automatically because your credit will get better. So I think attaching finance as an incentive vehicle towards driving quality education is a key part of innovation, and that we saw in Varthana as well. And that'll continue. That market opportunity is billions in India right now and in Asia. So that is a big vehicle we'll be riding for times to come. So those are three key drivers in our opinion. The things which are the obvious ones, such as supplemental education, are important, but those are important because schools are today often not able to do the job within the regulatory context that they face. So focusing on a company like Toppr is an opportunity sprung from the fact that a lot of the key concept learning doesn't take place at schools. And concept learning at a personalized level is best done in a one-on-one fashion, and one-on-one is not affordable at a school level. It's just not possible, and teacher quality may be questionable. But at Toppr, you can find your own teacher, you can find your own learning pattern, and you can go through the concept maze through step by step at your pace, which is really awesome for a student to retain their confidence as they learn. So I find that that's a good, while we were not looking for it, it's a great solution to have in the market.
What markets where you had a thesis didn't turn out well?
Yeah, I think the thesis that has not turned out well is really also happens to be in the daycare space, right? And that is not a matter of market choice, it's a matter of the choice of the people who were running the business. It really, in our business, it is really, if you get the market wrong, then you should not be in the business of investing, right? If you get the people wrong, then everybody is liable to make that mistake. But if you get the people wrong, then you better spend a lot of time in not making that mistake again, right? So I think it is a people business at the end of the day. Whether it's venture capital or private equity, it is not just a market play, because on day-to-day basis, it is really about aligning interests. It's driving everybody towards the same shared goal, towards having a similar interest and passion towards what you want to achieve. And that's something we've learned along the way.
So if you can tell in detail what have been your failures?
I think there have been people failures, whether they're failures of not helping companies achieve their full potential by not being able to find the best talent that the company needs. It is really about that. So for example, a lot of companies need the best product talent or marketing talent or human resource management talent at any given time, or operations process management as they scale up. And finding the right people at the right time is the hardest thing. So if we have failed in some investment, it is because we couldn't align with the owner, the founder, in terms of what talent we needed first, or we couldn't get the talent that we agreed to. It was just that, right? That's one. Second is making a bet on the wrong set of people who sold a good story but were not passionate about driving that story. And that was our mistake. So it's really just mostly people mistakes that we've made. And that's, I think, a lesson that resonates throughout the private equity or venture capital industry, that a lot of the good things happen in the business because of people, a lot of the mistakes are because of people.
If there has been any of the company who are anti-portfolio of yours, where you missed investing and that turned out to be great for the company?
I would say that's LinkedIn for me in my past before Kaizen. I missed out on LinkedIn, right? That is the biggest shock of my life to date. How could I? But that's okay. At Kaizen, the companies that at one time appeared to be part of the anti portfolio have not yet turned out to be as sustainable, as big as we thought they would, have disappointed. The one company today which we could not even get access to was Byju's. Looks great today. I hope it continues to stay great, right? So other companies that we missed out, I'm okay to have missed out on them actually. We've done really good work. Our companies don't go out into the market and beat their chests and speak about them being the market leaders in any dimension because they don't need to. Their work shows on the ground. KLAY has done fantastic work but doesn't speak of itself as the market leader anywhere on any forum, but everybody knows it is the market leader. Same for Varthana. Varthana is never going out to market and claiming to be market leader. It is by far the number one company in quality and size. We don't have to talk about that deeply. They just do amazing work on the ground. So we encourage our companies to focus on the reality. Insofe is the best in the world. We don't talk about that so much because we don't need to. What they do on a one-on-one level with students and partnerships they have with US universities or French or German universities are not replicable by any entity globally, not just from India. So I think these entities are just really good companies all in one portfolio. So I think let us see in education how it plays out. Still early days. There are some really good potential companies out there that we may regret not having in our portfolio, but so far so good.
So you have been an investor for approximately 15 to 20 years. What difference do you see in the companies which have scaled 50 to 100x since you invested and which have only scaled to 2 or 3x?
There's so many differences, right? I think the core difference is that the companies which scale multiples have amazing leadership, clear vision, ability to make some tough decisions, have identified a market in a way that it needs to be seen. So let me sort of clarify that a little bit. Everybody says that the market is big, that any company should target, and that's an obvious one. But that's not the most obvious thing to me. Of course, the market opportunity should be big, but the immediate position with which the company enters the market should be uniquely differentiated. The solution they come up with should be unique, and that solution might target a small portion of the market, but should be able to leverage that small solution, pointed solution, to wedge in, to create and to grow the market with them, and to grow into that market, be the number one leader, right? It is one thing to say I'll go out and sell the most number of widgets in the largest market in the world, or the second thing to say is I've designed the best widget which will take a niche but strong problem that I perceive uniquely because I have a unique view of the market, and I can find that unique new widget and I can enter that market in a small position with that unique new widget which nobody can imagine because I am so good at understanding that, and that will help me attain a position of leadership in a small segment of that large market, but then well position myself to own the largest market very soon afterwards. That is a critically important journey for any successful company. So that is replicated time and again. So for anyone to say that they've identified a secret sauce, a secret solution to a big problem is a critical thing. For example, you look at any company which is solving, I don't know, Shiro's, which looks at the business of whatever you define it, you must have a secret belief in something of the way you're doing it. The way you do it, what you do within that bigger domain, which 10 other companies must be looking at. What you're doing differently must be a unique thing, and that must be the reason why you will grow. Like maybe you focus on community empowerment, I don't know what it is. That could be the one thing that every company has to realize in their journey. And then of course the team, that's one aspect that matters a lot. And then on the day-to-day basis, making employees own the problem and the solution on a daily basis, driving a founder's mentality through every critical employee is critical. And if there is a sense of ownership and driving towards the same passion, driving towards the same solution with the same energy, then you don't have to worry about ever following up. Everybody's following up anyway because they want to solve the problem. So finding people who are on a mission but focus on bottom line as well, not just the mission, is very critical. But then you need to be the kind of leader that pulls people in that direction. So finding the right kind of leadership, finding the secret approach to the market which others cannot imagine because you figure it out. And this is most well discussed, in my opinion, in a book called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I love that book because it really encapsulates in a very beautiful way what I'm just talking about. So you may want to refer to that. And then not giving up, executing and not giving up in up cycles, down cycles, and keeping your eye on the goal and innovating as needed to. As the market evolves, as the solution evolves, as you grow as a company, as new challenges come up, accepting those challenges, identifying them, and going out and solving those challenges, whether they are operational challenges, hiring challenges, retention challenges, entering a new market, and focusing on the core strengths and not assuming that your core strength will change so rapidly. It doesn't really change that rapidly. You need to play to that, right? I think those are things that companies need to keep in mind, and those are the things that they have kept in mind. The ones that have grown tens and hundreds of times as opposed to the ones that have grown 2 or 3 times.
So, what challenges have you faced while building Kaizen? And Kaizen, you have not decided to market it like a premium venture capital fund, a Sequoia or SAF. What's the reason behind that?
So we are a homegrown fund, right? We are an entrepreneurial fund. We don't have the legacy of Kleiner Perkins or Sequoia, 30 years of investment history with Yahoo and Google and all these other companies in our portfolios. We don't have that. We are still very young. The typical growth of venture capital and private equity shop is really about getting the foundation right first. That may take 10 years. That's okay. If you try to achieve scale very rapidly, then you're possibly giving up on the foundational activities which are needed, which is to build a set of ethos, investment focused processes, and people which are critical for the next 10 years. So it is not about the who gets to a big AUM fast. It is about who sustains in the AUM business, makes the best investments over 30 years. If you're building a firm and you're building an institution, and you're building an institution in a space which is generally a harder space, right? Making investments with a passion, with a cause. And that generally requires that the skill set we acquire is that of people who come with a similar thinking process. And that's a limited pool. It's not just about can you go out, the best entrepreneurs, bring them in, invest behind them, sign the best deals and get them to grow. That is critical aspect of it, but then you need to enter with a philosophy which matches with the overall firm philosophy. So I think we are homegrown. We are perhaps the only fund I know of, and please correct me, I don't know that any other data, which has grown from an India originated firm to a regional player, where in Fund 2 itself, India has become 50% of the overall investment focus. I don't know anybody that's done it out of India. I think we have been able to do it because we are sector focused. We can traverse the bridge of the sector to cover geographies much faster than anybody else who might be a generalist investor. So that's on our side. So we're going to leverage that. We want to be a regional player. We want to be a deeper player in the sector. And over time, we might expand sectors, but we will also bring in other asset classes in education. So I think the opportunity is for us to be the premier player and make the best investments, bring the best change agents in the sector to the market, and bring really innovative products and services to the masses so that education becomes an obvious, individualized, personalized learning opportunity for everybody than a good that's available to people, only those who can afford it. That's where we are headed. So it'll take time, but we'll get there. So going back to challenges, it's really about ensuring that we get the first 2 funds right. Make our mark with high quality investments, make our mark with great people who stick around, who bring the passion and desire to succeed to the mix, and then we can go after that and do a whole lot more.
So, what is the stage of the company at which an entrepreneur should approach you for investment?
So I think we love following entrepreneurs from the very beginning. Right? We may or may not choose to invest in them after the first meeting or second meeting, or maybe we invest in them after 3 months or after 3 years. But really, staying engaged with entrepreneurs is a critical part of what we do. Because as an investor, if we lose touch of what's going on the ground, then we have lost it. So to be in touch is a critical part of our own KPI for all partners at Kaizen. Therefore, we are happy to meet with entrepreneurs at any given time. If not be of value immediately in terms of investing, then be of value at least in terms of networking, any feedback, and learning from them. So it's a two-way street. This is really important. We meet some smart people that we may invest in 3 years down the line. That's happened before. So our current focus is to invest in companies which are profit-making, but in the past we've invested in companies that are pre-profit. In the future, our next funds, we will look at companies which are pre-profit, domain by domain. So I encourage entrepreneurs in education and related areas to definitely talk to us at any given stage. We can be of value to them, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot.
What across these 13 companies, what has been the average engagement time before you cut a check?
That's a very good question. So we normally depends, but we don't. Unfortunately, we won't have a simple answer here. It is company by company. The shortest could be 4 months, 3 months, actually, and the longest could be a year and a half. Like Varthana, we knew Steve 3 years before we invested because of stage, but we knew him for 3 years when he created Varthana. Priya we knew for about 9 months. Toppr we knew for 3 months. I knew Zishan earlier. Nirav, the partner, knew Zishan earlier. But our engagement as an investing opportunity was a 3-month engagement, and we went because we knew what we wanted. So it depends. It can be very fast, or it can be prolonged based on we like the person, you like your company, your idea, but you're not at the stage where you should be. Why don't we stay engaged and we see you grow, and then we'll invest when the time is right. That's what we did with Varthana and with KLAY, and both worked out nicely for us.
So it's alleged that PE investors take control of the company once they come in. What's your take on that?
So I think if there is a reason to take control where the founders are retiring, we are happy to take control if we believe our skill set or ability to drive our skill set in that direction is there. We don't want control for the sake of control. Even if we are in financial majority in situations, we really want the founders to run the companies. We differentiate between ownership of the company in financial terms and ownership of the company's operations on day-to-day terms very clearly. They are very different things to us. If it means that we have to make more room after acquiring majority in a company for the founder and their team in terms of shareholding or ESOPs, we will do so. So to us, we wish to succeed with the founders and the management team on our side and working with them. But if it is needed where the founders wish to sell out, and that's known pre-investment, and we can take on the company's control, reins and drive it operationally by hiring a CEO, we will do so, right? But we do want to rely on people driving and not us being the leaders of companies, because our job is to enable success and not be the people who run companies. We have a fund to run.
If you can share some metrics around how have you helped KLAY, Toppr, or Varthana Finance?
Sure. I think Varthana, for example, we are helping them go through the whole thinking process and how to come up with a deeper engagement with their customers. They work with 4,000 schools right now. How can you make their engagement more meaningful and beyond just loans, and driven by a shared focus on quality education through school assessment programs, through teacher assessment, etc. That's something we're working on right now. And that will make them defensible for years to come. Nobody will approach them from that structure because the existing schools will go only to Varthana again and recommend Varthana to other schools. That becomes a strong word of mouth acquisition strategy and retention strategy, and then education benefits. It's a win-win, right? So that's something we're working on. With founding years, early days, it was really about ensuring that we gravitated the company towards more corporate focus, which was in Priya's DNA because of the IT sales background she came from, and she understood that very quickly. So that's one. Second, driving the company's metrics towards more financial metrics, to operations, to MIS, etc., ensuring that while there was passion and focus and drive towards opening more centers, there's also a focus on spend. There's also a focus on what metrics to look at in terms of size of centers, profitability of centers, space, rental agreements, etc. And those things played out a lot. And we learned lessons along the way as well. That's something we worked on very actively. So that's a typical role. And then introducing the company to potential buyers and That's critical because through those introductions, the company can see its future in the long run. 10 years down the line, it can see its future play out and identify a path to that particular endpoint. And that's something we've done very actively with particularly founding years and other companies, where we would take them to potential larger partners or buyers, which were hundreds of times, thousands of times bigger than them in the US or wherever, to spend time and figure out what they had done right and apply those lessons today so we would avoid those mistakes. That's a critical part of learning. So we've done that very actively. And of course, with other companies, we do what it takes. There are many companies where, for example, they have any given time issues such as the founder says, this is really hard, I want to give up. We do weekly calls with those companies. Every week, a couple of partners get on the calls with that particular team, with an analyst, and religiously for 2 years we've done those calls. Because we believe that if we can support those companies through our networks, our belief, and a focus on processes, that company will come back around. And once it comes back around, they'll never go into trouble again because it's seen some of the worst times. It's come back from tough situations. So supporting our companies through thick and thin is something that we have to do. And it's not just about board meetings. Board meetings are once a quarter. You show up, spend 4 or 5 hours. You have a board deck before then. You look at that, read it, show up, pontificate, think, give an idea, discuss, align, and go back. A board meeting is a culmination of many issues that have shown up over the 3 months. How do you know those issues if you're not in touch with your founders on almost weekly basis or as much as needed? There's for an open door policy. Call us anytime you want. We are available and we will help you go through the process, good or bad. That's our job. So the can-do attitude that we have at Kaizen, I think, is our biggest differentiator.
What's the qualities which you have tried to instill in your partners, associates, and analysts from the beginning?
And I think one of the biggest things is that we as sector experts are fallible, a sector focused fund are fallible to the thought process that we know more, right? Because we are sector focused. Oh, I know this, right? That's the thinking that might come to you. We've got to not have that thought. The moment we believe that we know anything more than the entrepreneurs in the market, we have failed. So the first lesson instilled out of that is our entrepreneurs know more. So listen. Every meeting, even if you know the answer you think, you be quiet and listen, because they will tell you things from their history, their journey, their solution, which are so unique that you haven't learned anything. And when you find that person who teaches you a thing or two and who looked at the problem in a different way and found an amazing solution, that is the person you want to follow and learn from. So it's, as an investor, you always got to be in learning mode, learning about the person, the company, the problems, the issues, the solutions, the happinesses, the sadness. That's one. Second, so respect the founder, listen to the founder. This is critical. Second part is follow the process of the investing as we go through and learn about the company through all sorts of sources. Do your references. So typically just go detail into understanding the company, which is a typical part, which is not unique. Everybody must do that and should do that. And I think one of the most important things out of this is essentially focusing on being available, being the first investor that the founder and the team calls when they have good or bad news. That's very important. So how you achieve that? By being partners. So essentially having a partnership focus and aligning yourself, allowing founders to make mistakes when you believe that they're going to make a mistake, but telling them you're going to make a mistake, but it's up to you, so that they know that you tried in their interest, allow them to try, but then coming back and saying, let's not repeat the mistake. You've done it once. And that requires that you build a partnership ethos around investing. So being humble, being focused, being of value, those are some of the critical things we have tried to instill at Kaizen.
So do you also have the same pressure to return money back to your LPs within a 7 years time frame? And does that pressure translate to the founder or transfer to the founder?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, while we are partners that exit. And that is the nature of the capital we bring to the table. So in some cases the engagement is 4 years, some cases 7 years, but the fund life is about 10 years, so we better exit around 7 years, right? So founders know that, and they essentially uh, buy into it from the very beginning, because we make it a very clear point from the very beginning that we will be, not lifelong partners. We might come back in fund 2, in fund company 2, or whatever, that you might start again, but for this journey we have a time limit, and we instill that from the very beginning, and we start exploring exit options very soon, because exit is a process. It's a process that's a controlled incident. It's not an accident that you, oh my god, I'm reaching year 6, I haven't thought of exit. That cannot happen. It has to be a process which leaves the company that you're working with sustainable after you exit and ready for further growth. It cannot be a process which disrupts business. Not all exits will be friendly, but the underlying ethos is that the process may not be friendly, but what you leave behind has to be the best thing that you could have left behind, because education must continue and must grow. That is a critical part of where we come from. So we have uh, exit discussions with founders very early on. We continue with those discussions and then get into process mode of how to get the exit, and that's just how we do things.
And what about the LPs? Have you started returning the capital from the fund one?
Absolutely. We have returned quite a bit of capital from Fund 1, and we have a lot of capital visibility coming up in this year as well, with some confirmed exits on the way. So, yeah, we will do really well. Of the 10 companies we've invested in, 7 have either complete exits or partial exits or confirmed exits. Only 2 to 3 companies, I have no idea how we will exit in the next 3 years, which is pretty good.
So entrepreneurs who don't have the opportunity to partner with Kaizen or are from different sectors, could you throw more light about the exit, because that seems really critical part which entrepreneurs can learn from the beginning?
I think exit is something that is a natural path of a company's growth. Exit should be viewed as an opportunity to change investor set, whether it's a financial investor or a strategic investor. Exit should also be an opportunity where the founders and the owners create value for themselves, right? So aligning with a fund and driving a business plan towards growth, towards exit, is a critical part of an independent of the founders' uh, journey towards financial independence as well. That's the way it should be viewed, and it is really about planning for it 2 to 3 years in advance, looking at all options, from buyback to strategic sale, to selling to another financial investor, to taking IPO, to going IPO, right? At any given time, being realistic about it is critical. So, and having a plan A and a plan B in place is critical. And sometimes plan A will work out, sometimes it won't. And then how do you go to plan B? What's the timeline for that? So having a very open conversation around financial disengagement from each other is a critical part. And having it at a level which helps the company stay equally successful or become more successful is a critical part of this conversation. So we can't avoid it.
What are the 1 or 2 key processes to think through exit, if you like to say about them?
I think one of the key parts of exit is to be able to, the founder taking on, this is as much energy as the founders spend on bringing in capital, they have to spend as much energy in exiting capital. That's number one. It is not something that can be left to other people. Number two, just like at the point of entry, a founder would spend time with a lot of investors who they want to bring in. The founder and the investor need to spend a lot of time with potential buyers. We not choose to go with any, to understand shared ethos, understand value, understand timelines, urgency, all of that, and the market readiness for such a company has to be done together. So partnering with the investor in finding an exit is the second part. Third, planning for it. And planning for it with even saying that if I get you this exit, give me this incentive. Even asking for incentive alignment is something that we are very open to, because it then is very clear that there is more financial value if certain metrics are met. So we like those things, and the thinking process about being able to create one-time value out of a lifetime of hard work is something that we encourage people to talk about very openly.
So Sandeep, we would like to now come to personal side of you. What's your daily routine? What time do you wake up? What time do you sleep? And what resources do you use for personal growth?
Yeah, so I think there are a few things which are critical to me on a daily basis, right? Um, there's a set of people that matter a lot to me, which is my immediate circle of influence. That includes my family, wife, children, parents, sister, brother. So communicating with them frequently enough is very important. I travel a lot, so that leads to a second part, which is to manage my health. If I'm healthy, then I can help others. So there's a thinking around living a purposeful life. At least as I've entered this stage of my life, I want to live purposefully. To be able to live purposefully, I should focus on myself first, and that's a critical part. And that means you focus on health, mental well-being, you focus on happiness, etc. And when you're traveling and you're focusing and you're at the head of a company, and when you are away from your family, it is even more important because a lot of problems stop at you, and you've got to resolve problems in your head. And how you do that? By being healthy. That's the ultimate answer. So focusing on exercise, focusing on sleep, and eating healthy are critical to me. So that's something of that's an ethos we've transmitted through Kaizen very clearly. Everybody here has, I think, is living a healthier life than did before Kaizen, 100%. So this is something that goes through the DNA of the company. I like to work out daily. I like to sleep enough. Don't compromise on that. I like to be able to have my own time so I can read through something and think of a new idea, which really helps me find perspective. So I think those are critical parts of what I do on a daily basis. And that helps me focus on what we need to do as an organization and what I need to do as a member of my own family, which are two of the most important things.
So can you take us through your daily schedule? What time do you spend in reading
Sure.
or meditating?
So now I have to take out flying time from that, right? Flying time is, I would spend about 4 flights a week, right? Because we're a regional fund and I've got to cover, I've got to meet investors, I've got to meet potential companies, I've got to meet portfolio companies. So every week there'll be averaged 4 flights for the last 3 years running, right? So this is something I do. So you've got to bake that in somewhere. So I'll wake up whenever it's needed. Let's say on average I wake up 7 o'clock. I go to bed by midnight. So 7 hours of sleep. Between 7 to 8 is my time to just relax. I'll do some basic exercise in the morning, like stretching, etc., just to be ready for the day. It's really, really valuable for me. And then I have a healthy breakfast, which even if I'm alone, I'll cook for myself, which I enjoy really quick. And then essentially get to work, go to meetings, spend the day. And if I'm in Singapore, which is where I live now, leave work by 6 o'clock, because 6 to 9 is my time. When I know that India will start bothering me after dinner again because they'll be pending emails that'll show up. So 3 hours I need my own time, and that's the time I work out, I cook, I eat. Or when I'm at my home, when I'm not traveling, then I will essentially with the family and I'll spend time with my kids. That's very important to me. So I think that's the way it works out. And from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., it's work again. Just focusing on clearing out emails, getting ready for the day, and then towards the end of the day, read something before I go to sleep. That really helps me find perspective. So I don't watch TV. I don't have any interest in that. I just read through the newspapers a little bit, and get on towards the middle of the day, afternoon, talk to my parents, my family, just catch up. So that's what we do. That's normally how it goes.
What are the habits and mindsets which you attribute your success to?
I think a lot of this comes from 3 people in my life: my parents and my wife. They are very important to me, right? Because they define how I live today. And you grow many times in your life. The first time I grew up in my life was through my parents, who actually enabled me to focus on hard work, having a goal, and being self-reliant. Because we grew up middle class, we grew up in a service family where parents were both working, and we were scholarship students, right? We knew that we had to fend for ourselves from the very beginning, and we did well, and they just supported us with everything they could. So we saw the work ethos, we saw the focus on family. So family and work were critical parts of my upbringing from the very beginning, and they remain so today. They're the number one and number two things. I don't have a number three thing except health. That's what matters to me. That retains. Then the second part, second phase of my life is growing up with my wife, which is critically about focusing on detail, focusing on oneself, focusing on family, and focusing on what is important to be supportive of each other, supportive to each other to achieve goals, which is critical. And that's something that has been a maturing part of my life. So therefore, as I look at where I am today, the critical things are covered in health, family, and work. And once those three are covered, everything is okay.
So, there have been any times in your life where you have felt lost, and how did you recover from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that happens to everybody, and without that, you don't find your path. So, for example, when I was in the journey of starting Kaizen, and it seemed like the most obvious thing for everybody to invest in, and investors we were talking to came back, and some were very excited, but they wanted us to change our strategy, or wanted us to do things which were inordinate, and they were putting a lot of money behind that, saying if you do this changes, we will put so much money, which required us to change a lot of our philosophy. It was very, very, very hard, because the money promised sustainability, but also came with strings that would have changed who we were. And I had put a lot of my savings into Kaizen at that time, and it made sense to accept the logical sense to accept the money offer, to take the money and change philosophy. It was from October of one year to February of another year, 4 months of blood, sweat, and tears. Then, when I felt like I had lost my purpose, and came out of that period saying in February of whichever year that was, saying, no, I'm not going to compromise on my purpose. I will reject that money offer, and I'll go ahead with a harder path, which is to restart the process again, with the hope that we will get somebody else to back us. And that happened. That was terrible. That was a very, very difficult time. But I think it happens to everybody, so it's not unique. But it was something that one has to go through to focus in harder on your purpose and work harder towards it. So that was a part when it was very tough. And second part was when I was very young, and all my friends wanted to go to IIT to study engineering, and I had no interest in that. I had a broader interest in life. I wanted to be to lead something from very early on, to define a path. So while I publicly said that I would look to go to an engineering college like the IIT, I had internally no interest in it. That was again when I felt lost, because I didn't know what I really wanted, except that I wanted to create something. And there was not enough guidance in India at that time from anybody. Growing up in tier 2 cities, and it is a vastly different world than growing up in a big city like Bombay, where they had resources, or Delhi. We didn't grow up in that. So we had to imagine a world out there which we couldn't experience, and find opportunities to be somebody that we had not experienced without being told what to be. So essentially that leads again to why I love what we do. It is to enable people to make more educated choices, individuals in any city, any part, any economic strata, very early on, by providing them access to information, education, etc., which is otherwise not available, right? So no child is that lost. And it was really hard, but it came out really good afterwards, but that was also partly luck, right?
So, any three advices which you would like to give to entrepreneurs who are building their companies right now?
I think one advice, number one, is to identify the problem you're solving at any given stage very clearly. And the problem has to be clearly identified at a deeper level. Sometimes when entrepreneurs say, I'm solving this problem, like I'm solving the problem of online education, that is the symptom, that is not the problem. That is the solution seeking a problem. The problem might be they're solving the problem of providing at-home personalized learning to students who don't have access to great teaching. That's the real problem. Then online is a medium. But if you think of online education as the problem, then you'll never move away from online if the world has moved away. You will be still stuck on it and you would have forgotten the problem you're solving is that of personalized education. which can be online, offline, anywhere, right? So I think identifying the problem accurately is a critical part, and it's a very hard part. Second corollary to this is continuing to identify the problem as the world changes, as you change as a company, is the second part of it, which goes hand in hand. So those two are number one, and most entrepreneurs have a difficult time with it. Number two is communicating that identified problem and your solution in a differentiated manner to the investor is very important. And so a lot of the entrepreneurs are really good at solving the problem, but not so good at communicating. And communicating requires that you think through it, discuss it internally, debate it, don't go for the obvious answer, and then play out the solution to investors. Don't go to investors with an undifferentiated pitch. Differentiation has to be deep and meaningful. Just don't create differentiation for the sake of it, but build that into your team, build that into your product, build that, then that should come out of your thinking and philosophy. So I think that's the second part. And third part is being ready to hire and being capable of hiring people who scare you. If you hire people to fill a job, that's okay. That's the least you can do, but that's not enough. That's necessary, but not a sufficient condition. Sufficient condition in hiring is the person you hire should say, oh my God, this person could take my job. That's a good person. If you're hiring people to fill a seat, okay, you're just going to benefit from it equally. If you hire a person to change the game, to help you grow as an organization, that's probably a better hire, because through thick and thin, that person will see you through growth. So I think hiring and retaining is a critical part of an entrepreneur's journey. Those are three things which are very important to me.
As parting words, Sandeep, who are the three friends of yours who might be investors and who you have learned from personally, who you would like to see on the podcast?
Three investors?
Yeah.
So I think there is, I'll name an organization, not an individual.
Yeah.
There'll be multiple individuals within that. For example, one investor that I like a lot is from Switzerland, and they are the Swiss Investment Fund for Emerging Markets, also known as OBVIAM, OBVIAM, and they've been very, very valuable to us in our growth. They understand emerging markets, they understand India really deeply well. They've been invested in India for a long time. They have a perspective on what it takes to succeed, which is very valuable, and we've learned a lot from them. Other investors that we think are great are, of course, the other DFIs, and they are all in one, like the IFC. They have incredibly awesome people. FMO from Netherlands, they have some great people. Same from France, Proparco, Belgium, Belgian Investment Office. These are all our investors, and each has its own take at governance, at processes, at identifying a social sector, identifying impact, defining a purpose, and they have experience in emerging markets, which is par excellence. So they are all people we learn from, and so those are entities that we like quite a bit. And then there is another investor that we like, who does very good work in education, is Holzbrink out of Germany, and they've done really good work in working with education companies, and they have a global understanding. So those are some investors that have done really good work.
Who would be back home?
Sorry?
Who would be, would you like to recommend from India as terms of who you learned from?
HDFC. HDFC has been a solid investor for us, and we've learned a lot from them. They understand what it takes purposefully to invest in things that they believe in, whether it's affordable housing or lending to individuals to buy their first home, or even education. And they sit on a board of management company here in India, and they continue to be strong stalwarts in terms of corporate governance, ethos, focus, etc. So we like them a lot, and we learned a lot from them.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. It's been an incredible journey which we all listeners have went through. It's been your journey, and I say I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siddharth, for the time. I appreciate this as well.